Today, we're going to talk about the mission of parenthood. And whenever you look at the history of education, one name that always pops up as the father of the public education system is Horace Mann. He had six primary educational principles, with one being the public should no longer remain ignorant, and public schools were the solution to that problem. And when I read that, now granted, I love education. I am for it. I love public, private, homeschool. I love all spectrums. But whenever you call individuals ignorant, I there's a red flag that goes off over there because let's talk about what happened back then. In the early 1800s, whenever the education system was starting to get established, parents were the dads were working in the farms, the kids were generally going and working with them, the moms were at home, the girls were learning house skills, and there was a lot of learning happening, granted not academic learning but still life skills learning. And what happened with that statement that I dislike the word ignorant is that nobody was ignorant. Maybe they were ill equipped to academically teach their children, but there was still learning that was taking place. And whenever the education system started being developed, parents started spending less time with their kids, and then the teachers became the primary teacher, which again, maybe parents are not equipped to teach their kids academic content, but ignorant is a rather strong word to overgeneralize society. Now, whenever we think about bringing all of that together, thinking of the education system, kids needing to learn, teachers becoming the primary teacher, I want to focus on four areas where I believe that regardless of the setting, academic setting that you attend, that it's their parents' job to teach this within the home. So again, I'm not discounting that schools aren't needed, that education's not needed, because it is for academic content. But I want to focus on four areas that you parents should focus on within the home, meaning the mission of parenthood in these areas. So the first one is emotional intelligence. And last summer, I was talking to a friend who is a public school teacher, and she told me, Kelly, it's insane that now emotional intelligence curriculum is being added to what we have to emphasize in the classroom. And then she added, what's even harder about that is that we spend a lot of time teaching these skills to the children, and then they go home and nothing is being done about it. So it's this conflict of information in their heads, and there's no consistency, that it's almost like wasted time for the teachers to teach this at school because it's not being emphasized in the home. So let's talk about some areas where I believe emotional intelligence can be taught in the home by the parents and really need to be taught by the parents. The first one is how to be a good friend. If you think about it, kids are not born, we are not, nobody is born knowing how to be a good friend. And yet we do have expectations on what we want out of friendships. And so spend some time, think about some of those things that you believe are important in friendships, what you should look for, and some of the characteristics that you want to teach your kids so they can be good friends, whether that's helping a friend that just spilled their backpack, or sharing the lunch with someone that forgot their lunch. Those are just things that we can teach our kids that aren't, is just not natural for them, but we can emphasize within the home. Also, how to choose good friends. There's a popular saying that you are your closest circle of friends, the five people you spend most time with, right, is who you become, whether that's with physical activity or diet, um, or even your attitude, the way you speak, financial decisions that you make. That's really, really important. So for our kids, let's teach them some of these characteristics to look for in individuals. If they come around and they say, oh, so and so was really talking back to the teacher today, is that someone that you want your kids spending time with? Because do you want that bleeding into their personality and their characteristics? So, how to be a good friend and how to choose good friends. A final one is how to handle conflict. Now, listen, I hate conflict. I always try to avoid conflict. My friends will vouch for that. But thankfully, I married someone who likes conflict, as in, he's not afraid of conflict and he faces it head on. And so I've learned a lot watching him how to handle the pressures of life and the conflicts that have come up in his life. And so I've personally learned from him on how to handle conflict. And so I think that it's important. Our kids will always, whether it's in the playground, whether it's in the classroom with a teacher about a grade, whether it's a late assignment that they have to speak to someone about, or it's an argument they had with a friend that turned into a fight, whatever it may be, conflicts will come up. And even if they seem really minor for us, whenever we think, oh my gosh, you made a 60 on the test, like maybe you brush it off. But for them, these are really, really big deals. So having the attitude to be able to face conflict and solve these problems, because they're going to face conflicts forever in workforce, college, whenever they move away from under your roof. So it's important for us to teach them how to handle conflict. Now, a second area I want to talk about is curriculum. Now, unless your child is one of the 1.7 million students that are being homeschooled, then you really don't have a strong say in what curriculum is utilized for your child's development. Now, here's what I do want to say is that although you can't choose the curriculum that's being used right now, there is such a fight between what should be taught, what is being taught. You love it, you hate it. There's really no happy medium. But with the policymakers, we don't have much of a say. Okay? But here's where you do have a lot of say is what you teach your kids about the different views and beliefs that you guys have. For example, science. That's an easy one. Do you believe in evolution or do you believe in creation? So, regardless of what is taught at school by the textbook or by the teacher, you don't know what kind of teacher your kid's going to have, what kind of science teacher. But you can teach them about certain beliefs and certain viewpoints that you want them to grasp. And so, again, you may not have a say on what's being taught in the school, but you do have a say what is emphasized within the home regarding curriculum. Which leads to my third point, core belief system. This is so important because right now, with the influence of influencers, TikTok, Snapchat, all these, the technology, YouTube being huge, and even WebMD. Yesterday, I read a meme that said, I'm a mom telling her child that she's actually older than Google, and her child laughing, but it's reality. We Technology is all around us, and this noise and this information is really at our fingertips. So if we don't do our job at teaching our kids core belief systems with ethical standards, with even as little as a white lie is unacceptable or what is acceptable, philosophical beliefs, your religious views, these are things that it's a really confusing time for our kids right now, whether it's with gender identity, whether it's with religious views, and all these things that are being barked at our children all the time. It is our job within our home to teach them what to believe. And then the final one is self control. And I use this word all the time because my oldest, Levi, is very, very energetic. And it's one thing to have a lot of energy, but it's another thing to be able to control yourself enough to when it's appropriate to behave a certain way and whenever it's time to behave differently. Now, I never want to crush his spirit because that's how God made him, that's how God designed him, and it's beautiful and it's amazing. But it also does not mean that he can go and be energetic at any point in his life, right? This is where self-control comes in. And this is the teaching that I do a whole lot within my home, because in really three areas: when to talk. Around the dinner table is a perfect time to practice this thing, this when to talk, because I've got three kids, three boys, and so they all have something to share, sometimes at the same time. And now we've talked about this so much that whenever one starts talking over the other, the one is like, wait a minute, I was talking, it was my turn to talk. And so they're even realizing that they don't like to talk over or being talked over. And so when to talk, taking turns to talk, it, realizing whenever you've said what you wanted to say and you're just going to keep babbling. Those are important skills to teach our kids. And again, in the car, going to or coming from soccer practice, whatever, is a great time for you to do these things. In fact, we did that this morning. We were going to school, we were talking about Easter coming up, and they're talking about Easter hunt and what they're doing. And Titus and Micah were both talking at the same time. And then I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And Titus said, Micah, I was talking first. What does Micah do? Just stops talking, because we talk about this often in my home. And so this is an area that I teach. I'm not leaving it up to teachers to teach my kids how to have self control and when to talk. Another one is how to listen. One time I was in a class and the professor was teaching us about how really terrible of listeners we are. And at first we're like, oh, whatever, I'm a great listener. But then we did this activity that if you are thinking of what you're going to say next as this individual is talking, you are really not as great of a listener as you think you are, because your mind is already thinking of the response and you are not really listening to what the other person is sharing. You don't have an opportunity to um, empathize and to feel and to be, feel the emotions that are going on with what this individual may be sharing. So, how to listen is also really important. That maybe whenever these kids are taking turns talking, maybe the other one's not doing a great job listening because they're just ready to tell me what it is that they want to tell me. But it's important that we listen, that we empathize, and that we have this connection of, hey, this person is talking, let's listen. And that also bleeds into the classroom and what that should look like. Then the final and really big one is boundaries. Now, when we talk about boundaries, we can talk about so many different areas where boundaries are needed and where there are lack of boundaries. But one huge area I want to touch on is technology. I said just a minute ago that Google was birthed during our generation, which makes us sound really old for our kids. But in reality, our children don't know a day without the internet, right? I still remember when my family got our first computer. It was such a big deal. It was like this giant box, super slow when you're dialing in the internet, ding, 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 ding. But for our kids, they don't even they don't know any of that. Now, here's what's super important too. I've met some parents that are super against it and they don't know how to control it. So they say, "My kid is never getting a phone. We're never buying a TV. We're never getting a tablet. No video games, whatever." Do you think that you are really setting your child up for success when it comes to technology use? Because they're probably going to have a whole bunch of friends that have it. They're probably going to have to need it for college, for projects, for work, whatever it may be. You're really doing a disservice to your child. Now, what we can do is teach them good boundaries, what good technology boundaries look like. Now, I can't sit here and tell you what's appropriate, because what is appropriate within your walls is different than what's okay in my house. And so there is no right or wrong. Well, there really is a wrong, because it's no boundaries at all and kids just being on it all the time. Next, if you don't think that I'm being truthful here, next time you go out to dinner with your family, look around and look at how many dinner tables are sitting there with the kids. My biggest pet peeve is when they even have the headphones in. It's one thing if they're just looking at the phone, but when they have these headphones in, they're completely disconnected from the family unit altogether, right? You are wasting that time to connect with your kids. Now, maybe you have important things to talk about with your spouse, but in reality, it's a family time. You need to use that time wisely. So set boundaries. Hey, you know what? We're gonna eat dinner as a family today. You may be get some feedback, negative feedback on that from your kids, but at the same time, it's needed. It's important that you teach your kids when it's okay to use technology and whenever it's a time to put it away. A simple one that I do within my home is whenever mom says that it's time to turn things off, whatever it is, phone, TV, I just have to say it once and everything goes off. If we start arguing or just one more, whatever, then that's when privileges start being taken away. And they do. They abide by it because, again, it's something that I'm consistent with, that we've talked about, that I've taught, and I said, hey, this is what we're doing. So, boundaries and teaching them how to use technology is super important. So, remember, regardless of the school model you're a part of, you are never too ignorant or unqualified to emphasize these four areas within your home: the emotional intelligence, the curriculum oversight, core belief system for your kids, as well as self control.